Well, God bless you one and all, and welcome back to the Bishop's Corner. And of course, my name is Bishop Dr. Herbert N. Scott, the Chief Prelate of the Liberty Hall Cathedral of Praise Ministries, headquarters being in Brooklyn, New York. And certainly we want to thank you for weighing in tonight. We also want to thank the good Lord for Philip Reed, who is affectionately known as Dr. Phil. And he happens to be the visionary for the Bishop's Corner. We always say, man of God, you're doing an awesome job. Thank you very, very much indeed. Well, we thank the Lord for the panel that we do have tonight. We thank God for the lovely, the delightful Dr. Dolores Ben that's with us. Woman of God, certainly a pleasure to have you on the Bishop's Corner, of course, and we thank God for the wisdom that the Lord has blessed you with. All the way from up north, Connecticut, we want to thank God for the man of God himself, Bishop Dr. Neville Wolliston, that is with us. Man of God, always indeed a pleasure to have you on the Bishop's Corner. Next, we want to thank God for the man of God, Apostle Lucien Rojas, affectionately known as Little Brother. God bless you, man of God. Always a pleasure having you on the Bishop's Corner and so forth. We just want to remember those that are not with us this evening. The woman of God herself, Dr. Heather Francis, she's not with us, but we do pray for her. And also Pastor Richard Mackenzie. Okay, we have a very, very interesting topic tonight. We'll be looking at the situation surrounding Will and Jada. And the topic that we'll be discussing tonight is, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go? Does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce? The questions that we'll be looking at tonight are these. Where did the marriage vows originate? Are they scriptural and are they relevant for today? Secondly, how do you determine whether you're operating in doctrine versus personal conviction? And thirdly, we'll be looking at the question, what are some of the things that we should consider before ending a marriage relationship? We must understand that from the Book of Common Prayer by Thomas Cranmer, he started this many, many years ago. I blank, take thee blank, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love, cherish, and to obey, till death do us part, according to God's holy ordinance. According to God's holy ordinance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about. All right. And the first question that I want to put to the panel is this. Does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce? One error in judgment, does that constitute in getting a divorce? Most of us, all of us on the panel, we are married. Question, how many errors have you made? How many bad judgments have you made? If each time you made an error, you got divorced, Dr. Ben, how many times would you have been divorced? Apostle Lucien Rojas, how many times would you have been divorced? Bishop Dr. Neville Wolliston, sir, how many times would you have been divorced?
Not many,
Dr. Bill, how many times would you have been divorced? So I want to put this question, first of all, to the delightful Dr. Dolores Ben. Does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce?
From my perspective, and I'm being backed by the word of God, if there is one sin that would allow you to divorce your mate, according to Matthew 19:9, sexual immorality. One error. Now, if I love you and you love me and we are in a relationship and I trust you, when that trust is broken the first time, let me put it like that, one error. If it is that I can forgive you, if it is that I can accept you, that you fell, that you sinned, and help you to reestablish our relationship, then we can move on from there. But there are some people, when this infringement occurs, they are not able to forgive. Or even if they do forgive, and they said, I would say they would torture the life out of that mate. They would bring up that occurrence with every argument, and they would make that person's life a living hell.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so therefore, I am a believer in forgiveness. I'm a believer of, I could give you another chance, because look at the number of chances that Christ gave me as a person. But truthfully, there are people who, when that trust is broken, they don't want the hardship and the hard work of rebuilding and reestablishing that trust. And if it is for sexual immorality and that person wants out of the marriage, I say it's all right. If it's not physical abuse where you're being pounded on, I say yes, it's all right. Other than that, my heart is that you would be able to sit and work through it.
So, Dr. Ben, woman of God, shouldn't divorce then be a dual decision, or should it be one person's decision? How say you?
It depends on the situation. Here's why. If I'm being abused, my husband may not agree to divorce me, but I am going to divorce you. Because if you don't seek counsel, if you're not looking for help that you could correct those behaviors, then that's a case where one person can divorce the other without them having to, yes, let's come to a mutual understanding. If it is infidelity, I believe the two people should come together and say, hey, I can't stay with this. I can't work it out. I'm a bit conflicted when I say that to you. Here's why. As a Christian, I honestly believe there is nothing in this world that you and God can't sit and work out with another person if you have an open heart and you're willing. And that's why I'm conflicted, because the first answer I gave is more of an intellectual. The second one is coming from the heart.
Dr. Ben,
Yes,
do you think
sir.
it's easier for us or for you or I to take that position because we have never been in the position as a offendee? So the offendee, I think the ball is in the offendee's court. The offender, yeah, we can work it out, but you know, you've given place for this thing. I am the offendee. Usually it's the female. It happens to men also, but usually the female. And as a man, I would want, no, baby, let's try and work it out. Oh, no, let's try. And that's okay. But we don't know her hurt or his hurt because we've never been there. And I've counseled many people in that situation. And my approach is just like yours. 70 times 70, and you got to love and your maturity. But this woman's heart is broken. It's different, I think, when we're in the seat or wearing the shoe. I'm not saying no to forgiveness. I can't really speak to that because I've never been there. I don't know what that hurt is. Now, you tell me about church hurt. Tell me about pastors hurt. Tell me about hypocrisy and criticism. Oh, I'm good. But this, I think it's hard.
I do agree that it's hard. But to see, the fact is, I might sound a little callous when I say this. If you have ever had your heart broken, not necessarily with infidelity, but broken. And you are able to overcome that and forgive. I honestly believe that you can forgive a mate and go on, you know, and always believe it took two to tangle. It, in any infidelity, and this is my belief, and I welcome anybody else who would, you know, comment on it, but in any infidelity that occurs, it is never only the man if he goes out. I'm not blaming the woman, and I don't want them to jump on me and say, okay, but there are always two people. If I am doing all that I need to do and I'm where I need to be, chances of infidelity, you lessen it. But a lot of infidelity occurs when people are busy about their own life and the needs of your mate are not being met. And then you leave place to the devil. So therefore, you can't always blame and say, well, he is the one who did it. You are the offendee. He is the defender. I do agree that that occurred, but they're in it together.
That's
Even
true.
though she didn't do it and he did it, or vice versa, but each person still has a part to play.
Each person still has a part to play. Well, Dr. Ben, woman of God, who could hurt you? God bless you richly. Okay, I want to put that same question that I put you to Bishop Dr. Neville Wolliston. Does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce?
I don't think so, Bishop. Short answer. I would, I agree with Bishop Dr. Ben, but I would really think it would be a series of events that comes to that place or bring one to that place where, okay, here it is now, I'm done. I want out because of whatever. Yes, Dr. Ben used the moral failure, which is the big elephant, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily that alone. I mean, that's the big one. Mm-hmm. I would also add, going back to Dr. Ben, I will also add, it speaks probably also to the maturity mm-hmm. of the individual, especially the offendee, not to minimize the pain, the mm-hmm. hurt that is being caused, or the broken heart. Because Jesus said, listen, 7 times 70, that's not easy. You understand what I'm saying? And, it's easy to preach it and to quote it, but to actually live it out, that's something else. So I would say it speaks, I think, to the maturity of the individuals. As I said, Bishop, I've counseled many people, and usually those who do not forgive or dissolve the marriage, it's lack of maturity and not realizing, hey, I have also sinned. It may not be moral failure, but mm-hmm. I've also sinned. So I don't think one error in judgment constitutes getting a divorce. A plethora, a series, a recurrence, okay, then that's something different, but not one, not at all.
Thank you much. I want to put that same question to the apostle. I'm sorry.
But before you go on, Bishop Scott, yes, may I respectfully disagree with my good friend and buddy, Bishop Wolliston. One could be as deadly as many. Mm-hmm. Many True. Could be less painful than one.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So if someone has made many errors, small errors, you see, and again, it's about interpretation and what's my level of tolerance and what's your level of tolerance, because we are all made up different, culture, ethnicity, and so forth. So to say it's only because it's one. What about, and I'm gonna keep it real, what about if it's a man that molests his daughter? That is different from snoring at night. or forgetting to take the lights off, or not talking to your mother. There are a series of things, and one thing can be so heavy. So when you say no, if it's only one thing, that one thing can be so egregious that it's more terrible than 10 different things. So it all depends on what it is.
Yeah, but Apostle, I got you right there. But let me ask you this. Hold on, I got you, Apostle. But let me ask you this. Right. Let's say you brought another elephant in the room. A man molests his daughter. Don't you think that man needs help? Would you not want him to get help or counsel or what have you? I am not agreeing with that kind of behavior. Let's say you divorce him and put him out to the wolves or whoever. He go marry somebody else and go do the same thing again. I'm not saying you're responsible, but I get what you're saying, the one thing and the many thing. I go back to say it has to do with maturity.
Well, I think there are levels. Stealing a cookie from a jar is way different than, let's say, a pedophile. Right. And look, God is able to forgive everything. But that's certainly a tall order for a woman to deal with. Impregnating your own child. Or that's not the first one. He did it with the sister, the big sister. You know, to who could say it's okay for that woman to forgive him, get him help, get him counsel, and whatever. That's deep. So one, like I said, could be so egregious. Because let me tell you something, we believe in marriage. It's honorable, it's beautiful, it's sweet. You get the right partner in life. It could be rewarding, gratifying, fulfilling. But a dysfunctional marriage can be a painful experience.
Amen.
So one, and again, I'm not, we good, but I'm just saying, I feel one could be so,
outrageous.
Yes.
And Jesus died for that one outrageous sin, didn't he?
Dr. Phil, you're about to say something.
I would say it depends on what it is.
No. So here's the thing. A man sleeping with his daughter is not an error in judgment.
It's a calculated action.
That is,
premeditated.
That's premeditated. You thought about it, you acted on it, and you did it, right? And you should be in jail. Period. Okay.
No redemption.
And this is not something that's far-fetched. It's something that happens every day.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. It happens every 8 seconds. When we did the program on it, it's every 8 seconds in a day, somebody's being molested, somebody's being abused. And so it's not like, what we're talking about is not like it's something that is uncommon. That in itself is a common activity. And so when something like that extreme happens, I don't even think there is a conversation that needs to take place. And plus, when it comes to people getting help, they have to want help.
True.
Right? You can't say to somebody, you get help and I'll stay. They have to say, yeah, I need help, and get the help they need. But overall, I can't hang out with you because
one and done.
Back now,
you saying one and done?
Coming back to the situation where it says, does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce? And again, I say this, divorce happens in the world, it happens in the church. And I go back to Romans, it's 8:22, where it says the whole creation groaned because we live in a broken world where unsaved get divorced, saved get divorced, unsaved get COVID, saved get COVID. We live in a world where the rainfall on the just and the unjust. It's real. It happens. So one divorce is one too many. But again, Bishop Wolliston, and I agree with you on this one, it says depends on your maturity. Because again, what I can tolerate, and your personal conviction is different from my personal conviction. What I can tolerate, it doesn't mean it's a rule for everybody.
Right.
Because sometimes we preach our conviction. So I get a conviction that I'm not supposed to wear jewelry, all of a sudden that conviction becomes a doctrine. Everybody supposed to stop wearing jewelry because I've seen the light. So what I'm saying is, I know of relationship where the man went outside, had a child, and it was hard for the woman, but she eventually accepted it, and they are still together today.
Yes.
So you might say, I'm not dealing with that period. I can't handle that. Some women will tell you they can't handle it.
Yes.
Others may handle it. Others may forgive it. So it's not a one size fit all. And we're not endorsing divorce. We're not saying leave. What is justifiable? What is justifiable? If he smokes, is that a reason for divorce? Some people say, well, I can't take secondhand smoking. It's going to give me cancer. I have to go. Some people say that's not a strong enough reason. So we could debate this from a cultural standpoint, from a scriptural standpoint, from a conviction standpoint, personal conviction standpoint. What is the error that will lead to that? Is there a measuring stick here? Is there a playbook to say this is okay, this is forgivable, this is not? So what is the error? So it's a broad scope and it's a very complex situation. Sometimes people, for example, some people say divorce is under no circumstances until it's their daughter.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
True. It's true.
And we're not promoting divorce. We're not promoting drunken driving. We're not promoting sexual abuse. We're not promoting fornication, adultery. But we're saying we live in a broken world where these things happen. That's why we're talking about it. That's why we're addressing it. Not because we address it, that means we endorse it, but it happens. So, what is the error? Here, what happened? I'm going to say this, and I'm going to end, Bishop Scott. But I really want to bring this to light.
Please.
There was, as a matter of fact, I can say is a Nigerian psalmist, very popular. One of our top song made 71 million views on YouTube. She was from one of the largest church in Nigeria. Nigeria got some mega churches.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
She was 42 years old. She had 4 kids and married. And her husband was abusive. Now, I read from the newspaper and from YouTube and from the news, so don't quote me. I don't know the personal gist of it, but in a nutshell, that's what really happened. He was abusive, and she ended up dying. He killed her. He stumped her in the chest. It was a constant abusive thing. Now, again, this is alleged that the church told her it will look bad if she divorced. Again, don't quote me. So it says stay there because the brand will be damaged. It would not look good. So hang in there, pray, trust God. He ended up killing her. You could Google it right now. It was the talk of the country. So in that case, people have a tendency because of mindsets, culture, how they grow up to say, well, no divorce under no circumstances. God hate divorce. Does God hate or endorse abuse? Which is better, to stay in an abusive situation, lose your life, than to save your life? So she ended up being murdered. Her husband is arrested. The children have lost the mother. The father is in prison. It's a sad day. Christianity is not something that we should put people in bondage and in a box in a mean way. Like if the ox falls in a pit, let it throw it at the mouth and let it die. It's the Sabbath. We can't touch it. Because the Bible said, let it kill it, but the Spirit give it life.
Yes.
And I believe Isaiah 1:18, come now, let us reason. I believe the God that we serve is reasonable.
Yes, sir.
So we hold on to these things because we were taught it for 50 years. It's hard to break. Mindsets is one of the most difficult things to break in the world. I've been doing this all the time, and especially if it never happened to you. I am a product of divorce. I am not proud of it. It hurt my life. It hurt my ministry. It hurt my children. It was hard. I thought this could have never happened to me, not in a million years. And here I am, not glorifying it. But there are a lot of people out there that is ashamed to divorce, they're ashamed to separate, and they are suffering silently. And sometimes, if we're not careful, the church could box them in. And should I go or should I stay?
Beautiful. Well said, man of God. So in essence, in all actuality, what you're saying is this, that one jacket does not fit all.
No, sir. Some large, some medium, and some extra large.
Thank you, sir. Thank you much. Okay, let's put that same question to the man of God himself, Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil, does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce? How say you?
Bishop, I love everything that was already said. And so, you know, in my personal opinion, you know, we make errors every single day, right? We make good judgment calls and bad judgment calls. But when it comes to marriage, we have to look at how it's looked at today, right now. And if you go based on the media and how the media talks about marriage, and that's why this subject came to mind, is like, and I'm going to use this as just an example. This is not the focus, but an example. People are talking about how Jada should divorce Will because he slapped Chris Rock. What does that have to do with the price of rice in China? What does that have to do with their marriage, right? They've been married for 22 years and some change. I'm going to throw away 22 years because of an error in judgment. 22 years, right? I think there's got to be certain things considered when you're weighing out, am I going to destroy or leave this relationship that it took time, energy, and effort to build? And I'm talking about a real, I'm not talking about even from the abusive perspective. I'm talking about you're in this relationship with this person for 10, 15, 20 years. Everything has been going like a normal relationship. You're going through your highs and your lows, and you have obstacles that you face and you overcome the obstacles. And then something happens, something major happens. Let's say, you know, things were compromised and he does something or she does something, and it's big, it's huge. It's one of those big rocks we call that says, well, oh, wow, I can't believe that, you know, so-and-so did this, right? Now, you know, let's say it's a bishop. I can't believe this bishop, he cheated with the secretary. I mean, now this is his error in judgment. That's an error in judgment. You know, and so it's like, now his wife should leave him. They've been married for 50 years, but oh my goodness, how could he do such a thing? And then it because of social pressure, she says, yeah, you know, you're right. I should divorce my husband because he cheated on me. 50 years and all of that work, all that sweat, all those tears, all those things you went through that were good, all those things you went through that were bad, all of that gets thrown into the garbage can. Some things need to be measured before you make decisions like that. Now, you're right. You've built a life together. You have kids, your kids graduated, you know, you've worked through certain things. You know, I believe some things are worth defending, not abandoning, right? If somebody messes around and tries to approach my wife, first thing I'm going to do is grab my frying pan. I'll be like, listen here, Doc, you need to back it up. And well, my wife, first of all, she ain't taking that. But, you know, there's got to be that kind of like standard of, this is my wife. This is who I'm going to be with. So if you're coming in, if you're looking and I catch you looking, my frying pan is going to meet your head. You know, I mean, I'm not constituting violence, but all I'm saying is there's certain lines that need to be crossed. I said this last time. being a Christian doesn't mean you shouldn't have boundaries.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that people can say and do whatever they want to you. They can come and, flirt with your wife and, and do all this stuff. And you just kind of go, well, brother, you need to just, no, sometimes people need to know, look, that is a line. I am not even, I will take my foot and put it in your John Hine parts, because you've crossed a very serious line. Right. And that's my opinion, Bishop.
Dr. Phil,
Dr.
we have
Phil,
seen
you
part
said
of
crossing the line. I didn't get that. You lost me for a minute. You gonna get your frying pan for if the guy looked at her?
No. I'm saying like, let's say like you have somebody that's trying to pursue your wife. You go to church. I'll give you an example. I'm not talking about approach. I want my wife to look good. If people are going to look, it's going to be okay. That's a human thing. But I'm saying, if you find let's say you go to church, Apostle, and this young man keeps approaching your wife. He's like, I really like your hair, and you look so beautiful today, and and then one day he goes to her and he goes, would you mind having lunch with me one day? Let's sit down.
But Dr. Phil, let me interject here. Does that require you to get a frying pan?
Brother,
I mean, did he touch her? Did he? So listen.
Wait.
My wife look good.
So Apostle. So what you're saying is,
you can take it that far?
Wait, so what you're saying is he has to touch her for that to be a violation?
Yeah, because if somebody tell my wife she looks good or she looks fine, I'm not gonna get violent because of that. Now, I was in North Carolina last week. Everybody carry, open carry. This young girl I saw, she in a purse. She said, "I'm a 22." I said, "What? Everybody have a gun in North Carolina?" Now, if somebody broke in my house and tried to attack my wife, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I know my wife. So if he chooses to, hey, you look sweet, you look fine, I'm comfortable in my skin. No, I'm not saying I'm supporting that, but I don't think I'm gonna go that far to get a frying pan.
So if you see it, if there's a gentleman approaching your wife on a consistent basis, you would be okay with that.
Because it's not that she's feeding into it. He could say what he wants. Now, I'm not talking about a stalker, and I'm not talking about where it gets like, but if somebody have a crush on my wife, or they say, "Girl, you look beautiful, you look fine." Okay. Once you look across that line, I can't be a jealous freak or jealous madman. Anybody look at my wife and say you look nice to get a frying pan.
I mean, I'm not talking about being crazy, man. That's being crazy.
But
I'm talking. Listen, hey, we're talking. Let's talk. We're talking man to man here, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I think, gentlemen, we know when it's going too far.
Yeah, exactly. You know when it's going too far.
Too far. And the subject is the frying pan. I'm on the frying. Okay, so let me ask you a question, gentlemen. Okay, what would you say is the number one reason for divorce in the United States? What would you say is the number one reason for divorce in the United States? Because you've all mentioned it in your deliberation tonight. Most of you mentioned it, starting with our Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben, I'll put that question to you. What would you say is the number one reason for divorce?
It culminates in infidelity. And I choose to say it like that, culminates, because it's not only the act of infidelity, but it is the betrayal. It's the trust that has been broken. And it's the fact that I put everything that I had in you, because if I love you with all or nothing at all. And you put all that in there and you feel totally shattered and betrayed. And it culminates, the object of it is infidelity. So I would say that's the number one. Many other things, you can handle, but yes.
Well, according to the marriage vows by Cranmer, honestly, keep thee only unto him only unto him, so long as you both shall live. Okay, and you are correct. According to the census, that is the number one reason. Bishop Neville Wolliston, how say you, sir?
Yeah, I was about to say the same, only because I haven't scientifically or through the census proved it, but you said it is. Only because from my counseling ministry, that seemed to be the number one thing. It's never he's less educated or more educated. It's never money, even though finances is up there, but it's usually infidelity that breaks a marriage to the point where there's no return or coming back from. So yeah, that's painful. Yeah. And I think, for anyone who's really thinking of throwing away, as Dr. Phil says, 20 years, 25 years, give it thought, man. Is it really worth it? A moment of pleasure for a lifetime of pain, it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, think it through. Definitely think it through. Yeah, but I would agree, Bishop.
Yeah, 2 minutes of pleasure, and it may not even be that good. No, 30 seconds of pleasure, and it may not even be that good. And let me say this, it's the divorce or the frying pan. Apostle, how say you, sir?
Well, it's a straightforward answer in terms of statistics. It's infidelity, and number two is abuse, and also money, finance plays a critical role.
Yes, it does.
Sometimes violent abuse. People stay for a long time and then they can't take it anymore in terms of the violence and so forth. So these are some of the things. I've constantly where the woman has a temper, or the man he likes to hit or whatever, and then where sometimes one person is carrying the weight. Like in this generation, in this culture, we have a way the way the system is set up that both parties work, and sometimes you have one person is carrying the weight for years and the other one is lazy and slothful and a sluggard, and the Bible doesn't promote that. If a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. And so there are so many things that can relate or contribute to divorce. And when things wear away, if a drip of water falls on a pebble over years, it can erode that. And so sometimes people don't get up one morning and get a divorce. It's been going on for a while. The pain, the abuse, the torture, the turmoil, the dysfunctionality, and so forth and so on. So yeah, but number one is infidelity, and many marriages withstand that. There are marriages that withstand where the man went out with another man, and the marriage still survived. So it depends on forgiveness. And look, sometimes one person can have a fault, like they say, strong people have strong weaknesses. But sometimes you have a solid marriage in the sense that good provider, good man, loving, kind, he has a problem, whether it's alcohol, whether it's gambling, whether it's woman. And that person weighs the pros and the cons and say, listen, there's too much to lose here. This is a good person. This is a good person in so many different ways. We're not condoning what he's doing, but I'm going to work this out. And some people might say, I'm not doing it. And others will do it. Again, I come down to the point of what's your tolerance level? What's your pain level?
Yes, sir.
On a scale of 1 to 10. Some people say, I can only take up to 6. Some people will take 9 and keep going. So, like I said, it's not a one size fit all. What works for you might not work for me. And again, Bishop Scott, I cannot tell somebody what they should take and what they shouldn't take. I know what I would take, but you see, I can tell a family what's the bedtime for your children. Some people have 8 o'clock. Some people have 9 o'clock. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's just that people have different standards. And like I said, different tolerance level, So, but yeah, infidelity, violence, and finance, those are the 3 top things that contribute to divorce in America.
Each heart knows their own bitterness. And there's a question that I want to ask Dr. Phil, but I'm not sure if he has the frying pan under He's
Go
doing
on, Bishop.
Dr. Phil, question, sir. What years of marriage would you say are the hardest? What years of marriage? The first, the third, the seventh, the 11th, the 13th? What years of marriage would you say is the hardest?
My goodness. We've only been married for 7 years. So this year would be 7. And I would say it all depends. I heard Bishop James talk about when relationships hit a curve. And he said sometimes you're in the midst of a change in your relationship. Somebody's changing. Either the wife is going through a promotion or a measure of stress in her life, and the husband is going through his measure of stress. And you have to make certain life decisions. And I think it's when you hit that point. It's not, I don't think there's a year point. I think that there's a point in your life where you're going to go through a change and you're both going to have to adjust, and you have to make a decision. How is this adjustment going to affect my relationship with my wife or, my family, and, and have that discussion. So sometimes it's unawares. And I think for most people, those curves, those corners become unawares, and it catches them off guard. Sometimes you're so distracted that you don't even realize that you made a curve. You don't realize that your wife went through a certain amount of change, and she maybe has more responsibility. You had kids at the age of maybe 2 years into your marriage. And so now she's spending more time with the kids, and you're spending more time at work. And so time apart means no communication, no connection. And so in that gap, there's a lot of distance can happen in that space. And so for instance, I met a couple the other day that they're getting divorced after, 30 years of marriage, because COVID kind of, when it came time for them to get together, and the nest was empty, and there were no kids, there was no job to go to, he was working at home. So now that gap closed in so fast, and they looked at each other and was like, we have nothing in common. Because
as you mentioned that nothing in common, then wouldn't you say, man of God, that the getting to know you years are where you're feeling each other out? How say you?
Yes, that's true, Bishop. But you know what happens? Life gets in the way of relationships, This thing called life, doing life. I understand exactly what Dr. Phil just said, because in terms of that 30-year marriage, and I always say to primarily women, you've got to have a life. No disrespect to the women. I know they love their kids. Dads do too. But you've got to have a life outside of your kids. And a lot of time for the woman, her life is the children. And they going to be gone at 18 or 19 at 20. And you don't know who your husband is. Bishop, I've seen that so many times, it's not even funny.
I tend to agree with both aspects, but in some of my readings, what I tend to remember is between year 5 and year 7. Here's why. Year 1, you are on honeymoon. Everything is honey and sweetheart and can I get a cup of water, love? Someone gave a joke once. They said the husband would say, honey, bring your footsie wootsie here and let me rub it for you. And she would bring it and he would rub her footsie wootsie. And after year 3, she brought her footsie wootsie for him to rub. And he said, woman, get that hoof out of my head.
That's year 3.
Year 1, you're on honeymoon. Everything is beautiful. You still have glass eyes. You're looking at marriage through different eyes. You're excited. Year 2, you're starting to learn each other. By year 3, you may start to have children. So as Dr. Phil was saying, your priorities start changing. Roles start changing. If you're working and he is working, so suddenly, if you're not able to divide those roles properly, where there's a nice balance in the home, if you're not able to establish family rules and family gatherings to make your family cohesive, then what begins to happen? The marriage begins to become a burden. If you're the type of person, when you get home, you were told they're in the office, so you come home, you put your shoes down, you need your dinner. She worked in the office too, but she came home, she took care of the kids, she got to prepare dinner, and you're angry because dinner isn't ready by 7 o'clock. You're not helping. So therefore, by year 5, you may have 2 children. Think about taking care of 2 children, managing a job and a home. They tend to say at that point, it either makes or breaks the marriage if you don't pull it together.
Dr. Ben, you're speaking from experience. I can see that.
Thank you, sir.
Listen, I love the footsie woodsy. I'm going to use that sometime, and I'll quote you, woman of God. Ben, let me ask this question. I agree with what Dr. Phil is saying, and Bishop Wolliston, and also you, footsie woodsy. I'm sorry, Doctor. But would you? The first question I ask, which really isn't a question that's on, but I'm just asking that: does one error in judgment constitute getting a divorce? Now, hear this question: are second marriages more happier than the first marriage?
A lot of folks, I've never been divorced, so I'm speaking from, let me say, a knowledge base, an intellectual base, but from counseling, from dealing with folks who have been in a second marriage, the errors you made in marriage number 1, if you're wise, you learn from it.
Yes.
And you put everything in place to avoid those pitfalls. Many times, your first marriage, you were so happy-go-lucky. You didn't realize that it was work. You didn't think marriage was work. I have to work at this. Yes, I love you. I like you. I love your presence, but I gotta be intentional about my marriage. And you were there with your head, in the sky, and then suddenly realize, I'm being divorced. I'm having a divorce. It causes you to wake up and pay attention. So when you come in now with a new mate, you take the time to learn that mate. You take the time to do things that would build the marriage. Let's say your first mate would have said, honey, let's go for a walk. I love walking in the park with you, just holding hands, spending time together. You would say, I don't have time for that. I'm busy. I got this to do. Your second mate, you would be the one, honey, come on, let's go walk in the park, because you learned. So I honestly believe, from what I have seen, and even in counseling, people who are in their second marriage, they tend to be very happy because they learned from the errors of their first marriage, and they learn now, this is a partnership. So I really have to pay attention to my mate so that we can build and move forward together.
Let me put that same question to the apostle. Man of God, how say you?
I agree to a certain point with Dr. Ben, although she put it across so eloquently. I, being a person of a second marriage, that's not always the case, unfortunately. I'm surprised it's reversed. According to available census data, the divorce rate for second marriages in the United States is over 60%, compared to around 50% for the first marriage. And I tell you why the second marriage is so challenging. Because you're bringing luggage. And now, if there are children, you're dealing with a blended marriage. Stepfather, stepmother. And let me tell you something. I wasn't sure if I would have survived the first 3 years of my second marriage. And I said, oh God, they'll say it's me. Twice, apostle is you. And then I was to the point, can I be real tonight? Can I
Yes,
talk?
of course.
Yes.
I said, listen, I put up with one marriage. I ain't going through a second one. and I'm playing big and bad. And now I realize, Bishop Scott.
Yes, sir.
I'm bald. And now there's no room for parting. Oh, that was, you didn't get that one, did you?
I got it.
So I'm saying at my age, if she decides to leave me, I told her I'm coming with her.
Oh, beautiful. Now, at least, go ahead, please, man of God. Please.
No, I was just saying, Apostle, I agree what you're saying. I understand. But remember, Dr. Ben had said from the second marriage, you learn if you're wise. Remember, she said, if you're wise, you will learn from your mistakes. And I do agree. You are 100% correct. There's a higher divorce rate amongst second marriages than first marriages. But I go back and agree with what she said. If you are wise in your second marriage, you will learn from the mistakes from your first marriage. You don't take so many things for granted and, she's just this and I got to have this. You obviously have done well, Apostle. You're on your second marriage and you're doing very well. So you
16 years. But Bishop Wolliston, while I agree with you, and that's the normal trend of thought. Hey, the second one, you'll be wiser. But the second one, statistically, it doesn't say that. It says 60% instead of 50. It means you should be wiser. It means you should be mature. You should be more experienced. You should have it together. You should learn from your errors. But the second one is higher.
But you know what? You know what?
Learning them. That means they're not learning from the first one, Apostle.
But here's the caveat for that, Apostle, is that most people, when they get divorced, either of two things. One, if they had a side chick, they married the side chick. One.
From the frying pan to the side chick.
Right. So just the fact that you are going into a relationship based on deception,
it doesn't last.
It's the foundation is already broken. So I would say that a part of that 60% is for the guy or girl that had the boyfriend or the girlfriend on the side, and they decided to marry that boyfriend and girlfriend, thinking, well, this boyfriend and girlfriend is way different than the wife I had. And so they marry that person. And then for the most part, look back at the wife and go, wow, she was actually a gem compared to the second wife that I was cheating on her with. And because she's raising the kids now, she got a job, she got educated, going to school, all of this kind of starts taking place, and you start looking back. And those are just some of the cases, right? Those are just some cases.
Well, Dr. Phil, the sentiment is, and again, Dr. Ben and Bishop Wolliston said that you should be wiser, you should learn from your mistake, you should be smarter. But look what the statistics said. It should have said the second marriage, 40%, the first marriage, 50%. But it says the second one is 60%. And I tell you what, when someone come into a second marriage, I said blended families, you might think that's easy. Dealing with a stepmother and a stepfather, it get dicey. And blended marriages, you begin to compare. She's comparing her ex, you comparing your ex. Even though we divorced, one of the things my wife would never do is this, or one of the things my husband would never do. And you understand, you think this supposed to be wiser, but now there's so much we're dealing with, and now you're bringing in your luggage now. That trust factor, there's so much factors. It's dicey, it's more complex than you and I think. Now, if someone has a one marriage, never been divorced, but I have experienced that, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Does my kids get along with her? Does her kids get along with me? It's so many things that contributes to that 60%. It's we would think it should be 40. We should think.
But
We should,
Apostle, here's the thing. We're in the same boat. You and I are in the same boat. This is my second marriage, right? I was married before for 10 years. Okay. And so we had a child in that marriage. And, you know, you could say, well, wow, that sounds great. And if you looked at our life, you'd say, well, you know, things were going well. But you know, sometimes you don't see the holes in the bottom of the boat, right? And you don't pay attention to those things. And when I was getting counseling, I'll tell you, get personal. You know, when I was getting counseling, as we were exiting, because we went through counseling several times in my past relationship. We went through counseling at least every 2 years, every 2-3 years, we're at a counselor, right? And the last counselor we had, she said, Phil, I'm going to recommend this to you. She said, you know, after this divorce is finalized, she said, don't get married for another 7 years. Oh. She said, because there are several things that are going to have to, she walked me through it. She said, there's several things that have to take place. Mm-hmm. One, you have to do some personal work. Right? You have to figure out what went wrong with you. And then you have to figure out what went wrong with the relationship. And she said, don't expect that new relationship to be 100% different than the relationship that you were currently in. Right? So there are certain things people, I believe, they don't realize the kind of bond they made when they got married to someone. And so even if it's abusive, you've developed habits in that marriage. You've developed certain things that you do naturally in a relationship, whether it be wrong or right. So that's why somebody who experienced abuse in one relationship will go into another abusive relationship, because that's what they're accustomed to, and they know how to live. They know how to live in an abusive relationship. So jumping from one relationship to the next, I believe if you check those stats, if you check the actual time between marriages, you see where people jump from one relationship and within 3 to 6 months, they're in another relationship. And they're carrying the same habits, the same hurts, the same disappointments, the same things. And so, yeah, and you carry all of that into this. I could say that because I took my counselor's advice, yes, I worked through a lot of personal things, yes, in myself that made me know me. Mm-hmm. The first person I needed to introduce myself to was the new me, right? Who am I? What do I like? Who do I want to be with? And so on and so forth. And I think people who are transitioning should ask themselves those questions and really work on themselves.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Phil. Now, hear me. I know that we have a lot to say, but we've spent over 1 hour on that which is not one of the questions. Okay, now I just want to ask one more question.
Okay. That was a very personal question, Bishop.
Before we get to question number 1, okay, how does divorce change a person? Okay, let me put that to Apostle first, and then I'll come back to you, Dr. Phil. How does divorce change a person? Apostle.
Well, Bishop. Again, I stand here as someone that has been divorced and in a second marriage, and it was painful. It was hard. It was depressing and demoralizing. And somebody out there would be listening and say, well, why did you do it? How, you know? And look, when you're not in a man's shoe, and you're looking from a distance, you could say anything, but he does in the kitchen really feels the heat. Mm-hmm. I tell you the truth. But if we can make our marriage work, it's better this way. I remember I had to pay child support, and when I went before the judge, I came home with 22 cents. 22 cents was my paycheck. He said, I don't care, get a second job. And I was depressed. That was one aspect. Then I in a sense, I lost some of my kids in the process. When I say lost, in the sense I was connected, but still it wasn't like me being home. And you would say, well, why did you, why? I don't understand, Apostle. Divorce should be just for the people in the world, not for Christians. So it was hard on me, financially, emotionally, psychologically. I cried. I didn't eat sometimes. It was hard. So I don't stand here today somehow glorifying divorce and saying, big deal. If it doesn't work, move on to the second one. It is tough. But that's why we go through hard things. Like I said, creation grown. Look, we're not exempt. And look, I lost a son. I lost a son, Bishop, and that's on November 9th. And sometimes I look through my phone and I see his picture and I break down, and it's hard. It's very, very difficult. And then two people blame you saying it's because of your divorce, your son died. That's a heavy burden to carry. Yes. And that's not true, because you can't let people's opinion define you. And I'm being a little personal here, Bishop. Right. Look, things happen in life. You hear me? I can go on to name wonderful pastors and bishops that had problems. That was not divorce. And their children fell through the cracks. Mm-hmm. Was not. Mm-hmm. And I use Rick Warren all the time because his son and my son had the first name, Matthew. He put a gun to his head. Rick Warren, 30,000 members, pray for the inauguration of President Obama, wrote the best-selling book. How could that happen? No way. Yes, it did.
Yes.
Didn't preach for 4 months. And so sometimes we think for Christianity is like, you shouldn't encounter no problem. Job had problem. David had problem in his house. His son drew a sword. There was incense. It was dysfunctional. The one who we love to preach about, King David. Real things happen to people. Yes. Okay. And Rick Warren and his wife was married for 40-something years. What about and I'm not trying to talk people's problem. It was he spoke about it openly.
Yes, sir.
A.R. Bernard, let me tell you something. Before my son died, the month before, I was praying for our pastor A.R. Bernard. And we have a prayer on Tuesday night, and I'm saying this man has lost a second son. The first one was to asthma, and the second one was for alcoholism. And he said it, so it's not like a secret. He says it. You can Google it. And I'm saying Pastor Bernard has lost a second son. And I'm saying, gosh, how can this happen to a man of God? Because some people feel if you go through something, it's either sin, or you're not praying hard enough, or you're not in alignment. That's the spiritual people who feel you should not go through that. Something is wrong with you if you went through something like that. So hear me. Lord, touch Pastor Bernard. I'm praying for Pastor Bernard, Lord. This man has lost a second son, and I know the enemy attacked men of God, and I'm carrying on. Less than a month, my son passed.
Yes.
So I'm saying people who haven't experienced these things, sometimes they could just talk loosely, not understanding the pain and understanding what we go through in this life. We are not exempt.
Yeah.
I had COVID. You mean I wasn't praying enough? So I should have not getting COVID. I had COVID. My wife did. My wife get up every morning and pray. And we had it, and we overcome it. So life has challenges.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet when people go through, we treat them with scorn. We want to drive them away. We don't want to associate with them. They're not deep enough. They're not good enough. They're not spiritual enough. This should never happen to them. Job, friend, they call them miserable comforters. Job, tell us what you did wrong. There's some secret sin. Yes. You as a man of God should never be going through this. So sometimes we have to be careful. When we have a happy marriage, we think every marriage should be happy, which is true. But you never know what people have to deal with and what they go through.
Thank you, man of God. Excellent. Some people go through health problems. Some people experience insomnia, can't sleep at night, weight fluctuation, depression, as the man of God said. Let me put that same question to Dr. Phil. Man of God, if you don't mind answering. Dr. Phil?
What's the question again, Bishop?
The question is, how does divorce change a man?
Okay. How does divorce change a man? I'll tell you how it changed me. I'll tell you that. First of all, I grew up as a PK. I grew up in a house where my father died, passed away, and my mother didn't remarry, and she raised 3 kids. And the relationships that I grew around were, divorce was not something that was considered in them. So when I thought about marriage before I got married the first time, I have to approach that because it was very naive. It was from this perspective of everybody is good, everybody wants a long relationship, everybody wants to work on their relationship, everybody is good. Everybody that says they're a Christian is saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost. That is the mindset that I had before going in. I didn't understand the things that are involved in that. So I looked at what I saw. I looked at what was experienced with, in my household and, through my family. All 3 of my mother's sisters, all 2 of my mother's sisters are married to pastors. Okay. That is the kind of household I'm talking about. When I got married, that was not, it was nothing even as I even imagined it. All I said to myself was, I'm making a commitment. I'm going to stick this commitment out. And little did I know that I was committing myself to a journey, a very painful journey, right? And so when it came time to make that decision, because it was very hard, because even each time that we went through counseling, the counselor would say to me, or would say to us, it takes 2 people to work this out. It takes 2 people to work this out. It takes 2 people to work this out. But it was never in that vein, right? And so it came time to make a decision. I had to make a decision because the situation demanded it. And I'm not going to go into the situation itself, but it demanded that I make a decision for the sake of my son and for the sake of my own personal health and future, right? So we made a decision. I made a decision, and I had to stick with that. It was very hard. It wasn't yeah, man, I'm woohoo, I'm getting divorced. This is great. It's a death. It's a death, especially when your expectation was a long lifetime of, working out things and, working to make the relationship work. And that's how I was raised. That's how I was taught. That's how I was brought up. And to be at that place where it's not working, nothing that I saw, nothing that was implemented in my life was watching my family members stay married, worked. So failure, the sense of failure was really heavy on me. I went through I would say I went through maybe about 2 years after of just depression, per se.
How angry were you, Phil? How angry were you? 1 to 10.
Bishop, in fact, I don't think I went to church for 2 years.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think I went to church for 2 years.
You're being honest. Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
because I felt like, first of all, I felt like I failed God. Right? I felt like this is huge. I made a commitment and I didn't keep it. And the Bible says that if you get divorced, you shouldn't remarry. So maybe I should prepare myself for that. But honestly, I was totally destroyed. It was the Phil you see now is not the Phil I was at that time. Is not that Phil. And so we had to rebuild. I had to rebuild. I had to go through the process of asking myself hard questions, like, who do I want to be from this point on?
Yes, yes.
Right. And what was my role in the failure of the marriage?
Mm.
In the first, I'd say year, I was blasting my ex, like, it's all her fault. This is all her problems and all this stuff. And then, I had to do a check on myself too, because the counselor kept saying, it takes two people, Phil, two people. So I had to work on me, because I kept in touch with her, and she said, you have to move on, but you can't move on being who you are right now. You're going to mess up somebody's life like that.
Dr. Phil, if you don't mind me asking, what advice would you give to someone who's contemplating divorce right now?
Good question.
I would say really measure it. If you have a lot of assets, if you've worked together and you've built a life and you have a lot of things that you've worked through, depending on what you're going through, if it's abusive, it is very toxic, the money is not worth it. The things are not worth it. If you have to rebuild, but don't hang out in a situation that is going to destroy you. And you're not going to be able to identify yourself once the whole process is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason why I asked that is because from listening to you, I can hear, the pain and, it's like a rehash of what happened, and you call it out. It's a death. It really, really is. And, I totally agree that infidelity should not be something that's tolerated, or abuse. But, I would definitely agree with you. If you can work it out, try to work it out. And like you said, it's two. It's not just me wanting it and she don't want it, or she want it and I don't want it. Yeah, it's I've never experienced it. And trust me, I don't want to experience it, because from hearing about your situation like yours and Apostle, and the pain and the depression, I don't know if I could deal with that.
I'm going to tell you this.
And I just want to jump in and comment. Both Apostle Rojas and Doc Phil, for your openness and sharing. Thank you for making it so plain. I've not walked that road, but I was listening to someone give a lecture once on the perils of divorce. And the illustration that they used was, he took two pieces of board, one representing the male, the man, the other representing the woman. And then they took crazy glue and they put it between, and they put the two pieces together, representing the marriage. This is two people becoming one. And the illustration was that in divorce, when the man and the woman are pulled apart, it's never a clean break. That there are pieces of the wood that represent the man that remain on the woman, and vice versa. And just your explanation demonstrates the pain and the discomfort and the fact that you can be totally depressed, loss of self-esteem, the feelings of failure. What can I have done better? You go through a grieving process. I think a divorce is number 2 after death. Death is the first, right? It's at 100. That's the highest. The second one is divorce. And it's really a death. It's a death of a life. It's a death of a hope. It's a death of a dream.
Yes.
Because you're walking down that aisle, we're going to make it. And that pulling apart. And what they're saying is that man and that woman, after they pull apart, they're never the same. It takes years of counseling. And as Apostle said, that junk, because you're carrying stuff from her, the man is, and the woman is carrying stuff from him, you know, and to pull apart, you're never ever the same. It takes counseling and prayer to become whole again.
I never ever thought that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bishop.
No, good. No.
I never thought that the program would take, this format, this order, but I thank God that it did, because, I want to thank God for Apostle Lucien Rojas, the transparency man of God, and also you, Dr. Phil. And I can see that the both of you spoke from the depth of your heart. And all of this, I'm sure that people are hearing this. So people will consider before they make that move. If I may, and Dr. Phil, I do apologize for not touching question number one, but
no, it's
if
okay,
I
Bishop.
may
It's okay,
just, say this. The question is, why are folks sometimes so quick to get a divorce? Why, in your estimation, are folks so quick sometimes to get a divorce? There must be a principle of sufficient reason. Dr. Ben, how would you address that?
I think it's cultural. Why I'm saying cultural first is, I remember when I got married 43 years ago, our pastor looked at us and said, divorce is not an option. The church frowned upon divorce at that time. And we looked at each other and said, we are in this for life until death do us part. We made a personal commitment to be in it for life. Times have changed. People have changed. The things they look to and desire have changed.
Yes.
This modern 21st century, this modern era, this generation, this Gen Z that we're talking to, they want instant gratification. They tell you if it ain't broken, don't fix it. I love the advertisement. It's my money and I want it now. Right? Look at the trends that we have. Everything is instant. And the teachings and the philosophies around this culture is, I can do bad all by myself.
Don't need
if you don't measure up to scratch, then next. That commitment, that dedication, that looking at marriage as representing what Christ and the bride of Christ, the church, that relationship. You don't hear much about that anymore. It's mostly looked at, we get together, they don't consider it a covenant. That's not how it's seen. We get together, I marry you. If it don't work out, hey, we get a divorce. There is not the present culture that we are in does not feed or propagate longevity in marriage. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, move on.
Okay, we only have approximately 7 minutes left. Bishop Dr. Neville Wolliston, why are folks so quick to get divorced?
Bishop, I definitely agree with Dr. Ben. If I would just go back real quick, when I got married almost 40 years ago, I was nervous. I was scared because of the D word. I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I had to make certain that, hey, this is who I want. This is what I want. And so I prayed and I took time just to make sure, because again, as Dr. Ben says, the culture, the church culture, the spiritual climate was, you frown upon something like that. So for me, I had to make doubly sure that this is who I'm going to commit to for the rest of my life. Lastly, I would say the answer to that question from my point of view is, who you getting advice from? It's who's advising you. Girl, if I was you, child, you do what? You putting up, and most of these people who give me advice ain't got nobody.
Yes.
So I would say it all depends. You don't hear a lot of Dr. Ben saying, come on, let's work this through. Can we talk together? Can we pray together?
Mhm.
She mentioned the Gen Zs, I'm not calling them out, or the millennials or whoever they are, in this instant, quick world as, child, were you crazy? Get rid of that, whatever. So I think it depends who you're taking advice or counsel from.
Mhm. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. Dr. Phil.
Bishop, I don't think anybody really gets married to get divorced. But I think that primarily it's the perception, because I'm looking at, it's not everybody's marriage was like, like Bishop Dr. Ben and Bishop Wolliston. Some people saw things, even in the marriages that were 30 years, because of the old thinking of we don't just get divorced. Some people saw their mothers being pummeled for 25 years, right? And so when they got out of the house, they basically said, I'm not going to even deal with that for 5 seconds, right? Or they saw their father and their mother argue for 25 years, 30 years, no peace in the home, just like constant conflict. Or the husband sleeps in one room and the wife sleeps in one room for 30 something years. Yeah, they come out and say, yeah, I've been married for 30 something years. But the kids know. The kids know. Right. The kids know. So now this generation is like, yeah, I don't want that life. I don't want to be numb and just kind of like say, okay, this is what I got. Right. And I think, even though some people try to be as careful as possible, I'm going to cut my short. They try to be as careful as possible. They try to live together for a while and all this stuff. And that's where all of that came from, trying to be careful. But no matter what you do, everybody has issues.
That's true.
Everybody's got it. So no matter who you marry, no matter who you connect with, you're going to have to work on something.
Okay, we only have 3 minutes left. Lucien, Rojas, Apostle, how say you, sir?
You're muted, Apostle.
I really commend Dr. Ben and Bishop Wolliston. And Bishop Scott, you yourself, and I would not disrespect you or look at you differently if you was divorced. Yes. But we thank God for the example that you guys have set. And not that I wanted to set that example. I didn't want that. And sometimes, and I hear the word, it takes two to tangle, which is true, but sometimes there's a guilty party. Someone ran out with a girl ran out with another girl. What are you supposed to do as a man? or man run out with another? I don't tell you, these things happen.
Get the frying pan.
So, but listen, I think people underestimate the power of counseling.
Yeah.
Counseling is so pivotal in a relationship.
Yeah.
Before and even during. And for me, and again, I don't want to sound like a victim here. I thank God for healing. But I went through divorce as a pastor. Number 2, West Indian. And number 3, while the divorce was painful, the backlash from the church was even double painful.
Of course.
So this wasn't a nice thing to go through. I don't enjoy. I don't say this in any way to say, well, hey, I survived or whatever. It's painful, but we all go through painful things in life.
That's true.
Okay, let me first of all apologize to Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil, please don't feel bad with me, sir.
No need to, Bishop. No need to. We're going to continue.
I did not touch. Okay, we've heard a lot. We've said a lot. What should we take away from tonight's conversation? Dr. Ben.
Wow, that regardless how your relationship looks, if there's someone out there, think about it first. Weigh your options. I would not say that divorce is not an option, but weigh the pros and cons. Seek counseling and find time to pray, most of all, and seek God. because marriage is beautiful, but a tough marriage could be hard to live through. So seek counsel, seek counsel, seek counsel.
Thank you much. Bishop Wolliston.
Yeah, very simply, Bishop, divorce is painful. Don't do it if you don't have to.
Also,
Or me, Bishop? Yeah, well,
yes.
I mean, listen, I've been through it, and gee, it's unpleasant. It's not a good experience, and but sometimes, like I said, in some scenarios, it's better to go in that route than to being killed or murdered. And I'm not trying to exaggerate the fact, but being abused. I mean, who wants to be punched and kicked, and is that a life? Is that something that you have to endure? Really? You know, and it happens today. And I tell you what, we hate one divorce is one too many, but nobody wants to see someone that they love go through that.
True.
Dr. Phil.
You know, marriage is a beautiful thing when you have the right mindset. When your mind is right and you marry somebody with a correct mindset towards marriage, it's a beautiful thing. If you carry your dysfunctions into marriage and you're not aware of even what your dysfunctions are, you're going to have a miserable time.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. Okay, well, there's so much we have learned and we have heard tonight. My takeaway is this. In marriage, please enjoy the footsie-wootsie. However, when things go wrong, look out for the frying pan. But if there is a divorce, it's never an even break.
Amen.
Things to remember. This is Bishop Scott saying good night from the Bishop's Corner. See you next week.